You ever hear footsteps in a place where you know you're completely alone? Not the soft creaks of wood or random pops from pipes. I mean the steady rhythm of someone dragging their feet across the floor. That's the sound I still hear sometimes. Even now, years after I quit my job at Ridgeway High School. I was a janitor there for nearly 6 years, always on the graveyard shift. Clock in at 10 p.m., work until the buses rolled in at dawn. For the most part, I didn't mind. No screaming kids, no annoyed teachers, just me, my cart, and the sound of my mop sliding over empty floors. But at night, the school was different. Not just empty. Not just quiet. Dead. The air felt heavy, like the walls themselves were listening. The buzzing lights overhead never seemed steady, they flickered, hummed, and sometimes cut out entirely, leaving you in darkness until they sputtered back to life. And then there was the basement. Ridgeway's basement wasn't normal. Built in the late 40s, it stretched under half the school. Long, narrow hallways of cracked cement. Pipes running overhead, dripping rust-colored water. Storage rooms crammed with desks stacked like coffins, boxes of textbooks rotting away, and broken furniture that looked more like junkyard scraps than anything useful. It smelled like wet stone and mildew. Every step echoed too loud. And half the lights didn't work. From my very first week, another custodian, Carl, warned me. He said, "Stay out of the basement if you can. Once it notices you, it doesn't stop." I laughed. I thought he was just trying to scare the new guy. But then came the night I had no choice. There was a big event the next morning. My supervisor left me a note, "Bring up folding tables stored in the basement." I remember standing at the top of the stairwell, staring at the heavy metal door, my hand on the knob. Something deep in my gut whispered, "Don't." But I pushed the door open. The stairwell groaned under my boots as I descended. I flipped the switch, only 2 lights flickered on, casting pale halos in the dark. I clicked on my flashlight and walked down the narrow corridor. The tables were supposed to be in the 3rd storage room. The first door was stuck half shut, but I could see old chairs piled like a mountain behind it. The second held rows of filing cabinets with doors hanging open like gaping mouths. By the time I reached the 3rd, I was already sweating, though the air was cold and still. The door squealed when I pulled it open, the sound bouncing down the hallway. Inside, tables leaned against the wall, coated in dust. I bent down to drag one out. That's when I heard it, the dull, slow scrape of someone dragging their shoes across the concrete, one careful step at a time, just outside the door. I froze, hands locked on the metal frame. For a moment there was only silence pressing in on my ears. Slowly, I turned, peeking out the doorway with my flashlight beam. The hallway was empty. But 20 feet down, one of the storage room doors was cracked open just an inch. I knew it had been shut. I whispered into the dark, "Hello? Anyone down here?" My voice sounded small. Weak. No answer. Every instinct told me to run. But I crept closer, one step at a time, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. When I reached the door, I shoved it open. The room was empty, dusty shelves, broken boxes, cobwebs swaying in the beam of my light. Relief washed over me. Then, from behind me, that same dragging scrape began again, closer, 2 slow slides of a sole on concrete, as if someone had stepped right into the hall. I spun around, the light cutting across the corridor. And saw nothing. Just concrete, shadows, and darkness that felt too heavy, pressing against my skin. Then came the cold. A freezing draft slid across the back of my neck, impossible in that windowless underground. So cold, my breath puffed white in the beam of the flashlight. That's when I bolted. I ran down the hall, snatched the tables I'd already dragged to the stairs, and scrambled up 2 steps at a time. By the time I hit the main hallway, my chest was heaving, sweat dripping down my face. I slammed the basement door shut. And for the first time, I locked it. I told myself it was just nerves. An old building. Bad lighting. Maybe rats. That's what I kept repeating, until a week later. I was mopping the hallway directly above the basement when it started. 3 heavy blows pounded up through the floor beneath me, one after the other, so sudden the mop slipped from my hand and the water in the bucket sloshed free. I froze. Then the basement door at the end of the hall started rattling. Shaking violently. Like something was slamming against it from the other side. I gripped the mop handle like a weapon. I didn't breathe. Didn't move. Just waited until the rattling stopped. After that, I refused to go back down alone. But here's the part that still makes my blood run cold. On my last week before I quit, Carl cornered me in the break room. His eyes looked hollow, tired. He said, "You've heard it, haven't you? The dragging." I didn't answer. I didn't want to. But he just nodded like he already knew. Then he leaned closer and whispered. "Once it notices you, it doesn't stay in the basement." That was 5 years ago. Last night at 3:07 a.m., something dragged across my living room floor. Not a sound from outside the house. From inside. So tell me, where do you hide from something that followed you home? If this story sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to subscribe to Scary Ambience and tap the bell icon. That way, you'll never be alone in the dark again.